Wildlife, I believe, is the title project. This is his second speech. The title of the speech is the Illegal Wildlife Trade in Indonesia. Please help me welcome Karl Stromayer.
Mr. Toastmaster, fellow members and guests, it's my pleasure today to talk a little bit with you about the illegal wildlife trade in Indonesia. And I would like to say that probably we as Americans, when we think of Indonesia, we visualize this island nation of beautiful palm trees and warm seas, and there's a lot of truth to that. It's a nation of some 19,000 islands in the South Pacific Ocean in an area of Southeast Asia. We also may think of the world's largest nation that is predominantly Muslim. There's about 250 million people in Indonesia versus our 350 million. So a very large population, significant area, and as a biologist and wildlife ecologist, I'm going to focus on the natural history of Indonesia a little bit today. What makes this place important and some of the threats that are going on there right now. The country is predominantly tropical rainforest on land, yet it's surrounded by beautiful coral reefs. So it has one of the largest biodiversities of species of animals and plants anywhere on Earth. And that's what makes it important in the wildlife trade. I had the opportunity recently to spend a month working in Indonesia with Indonesian civil servants and biologists to address the illegal wildlife trade. And our objective was to do an assessment of the trade and then to try to come up with solutions to address the trade itself. Looking at different taxa or groups of animals, we could focus on tropical fish. And there's about 8 million species of tropical fish that are exported out of Indonesia every year as either usually for the pet trade. So this is a big threat to these animals. And what's really of great concern is that when people go out and harvest these species, usually for every one that is captured live, another one dies. So there's a very high mortality rate, and the use of cyanide for the capture of the tropical fish is quite destructive to the reefs. It kills the coral. And then of the fish captured, only about half of them actually make it safely to market alive. So it's a kind of a wasteful practice. And then if you look at other taxa, like reptiles, there's about 1,100 different species of reptiles in the country. Everything from the famous Komodo dragon to little geckos that can run along the ceiling upside down and eat insects. And these things come in all kinds of different colors. There's green pythons and other marvelous species. And of these, also, they're heavily exported. Even though the government of Indonesia issues about 45,000 export permits for these tokay geckos, this large gecko species, the country actually exports about 1.2 million of them. So there's a huge illegal trade going on. And we could continue in this vein talking about primate species. There's about 40 species of primates in the wild in Indonesia. Everything from orangutans to gibbons to smaller species like macaques and the tiny owl-like tarsiers. And of these, about half or 20 species are threatened with immediate extinction because of overexploitation, both as pets and they're harvested for human consumption. And this concern also goes on with birds. About 650,000 wild birds are taken from the wild and put into captivity every year in Indonesia, sold into the pet trade. So you might ask at this point, why should we as Americans be concerned about it? Well, what role do we as citizens of the United States of America have in this illegal trade? Our study showed that from the rural areas, the forested areas and the reefs, the wildlife is concentrated into provincial ports, and then often is moved on in shipping containers to the capital city of Jakarta. From there, the wildlife is exported, and huge numbers of these species do go abroad to the United States, to Japan, Europe, China, many diverse countries. And again, what's in it for us? Well, we in the United States are a huge importer. We're the world's biggest importer of wildlife products on an international level. And if we look at the port of Los Angeles, where we have wildlife inspectors, we'll see that about 500 different shipping containers are seized by our law enforcement personnel because the species in them are found to be being illegally exported. And that story is similar in places like Europe and elsewhere where these species are in heavy demand. With this reality known to us, we need to look for a solution. What can we do about it? And some of the things we can do, we can support Indonesian civil society, non-governmental organizations such as the World Wildlife Fund, the Rhino Protection Units, village-based monitoring groups that actually keep an eye on the coral reefs and report the illegal activities to their law enforcement personnel. We can support them, and closer to home, we as consumers can vote with our wallet. When we go to the pet store, we can insist that the tropical fish we buy for our aquaria be raised in captivity and not wild caught. In closing, the future of these marvelous species in Indonesia is in our hands. The time to act is now. Mr. Toastmaster.